The first snow of winter had already begun to fall over Willow Ridge, a quiet mountain town nestled high in the Colorado Rockies. The world outside looked like a postcard: white roofs, pine trees dusted with frost, and a thin ribbon of smoke curling from chimneys. Inside the small post office at the edge of Main Street, Emma Blake rubbed her hands together for warmth and watched her breath fog the air. The heater had given up again, humming like a tired old man. She smiled to herself. Figures. Emma was 30 years old, but most days she felt older. The post office was her routine, 6 days a week, sorting mail, scanning packages, and serving the same locals she'd known since childhood. Retirees, ranchers, tourists during ski season. She'd once dreamed of painting, of opening a little art studio near the lake. But dreams were fragile things, easily replaced by duty. When her father had fallen ill 3 years ago, she'd left Denver and moved back home to take over his job. Now her life was simple, predictable, quiet, and yet some days, when the mountains glowed pink at sunset, Emma would feel a strange ache, as though life was calling her from a distance she couldn't name. That morning, as she sorted the last pile of envelopes, something caught her eye. A letter that didn't look like the others. It was thick, cream-colored paper with a wax seal pressed in the shape of a compass. No barcode, no printed label, just a name written in dark, flowing ink: Lucas Hale, 14 Evergreen Cabin Road. Emma frowned. Evergreen Cabin Road. That was out past the old hiking trail, near the forest line. A place few people went anymore, especially after the avalanche that had nearly buried the valley years ago. She turned the envelope over. No sender, no date, no postal stamp. Strange. She almost placed it in the undeliverable pile, but hesitated. Something about it felt alive, as if it had been waiting for someone. The snow thickened by midday. The streets emptied, and the post office fell silent. Emma could have gone home. The roads were already closing, but her curiosity tugged at her like a string. She grabbed her coat, slipped the letter into her bag, and drove her old Jeep up the winding mountain road. The deeper she went, the quieter it became. The trees stood tall and heavy with snow. The world felt paused, like time itself was holding its breath. Finally, she reached the cabin. It was small, wooden, with smoke barely rising from the chimney. The porch light flickered weakly. She knocked. After a pause, the door opened. A man stood there, tall, with dark hair and tired eyes, a flannel shirt hanging loose over his frame. He looked like someone who'd stopped caring what day it was. "Yes?" he asked, his voice low and rough. "Delivery for Mr. Lucas Hale," Emma said, holding up the letter. "No return address. It must have been misplaced for a long time." He stared at it like he was seeing a ghost. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for it. "This can't be," he whispered. "Where did you get this?" "It was mixed in with an old batch," she said gently. "It must have gotten lost." He stepped aside. "Come in, please." Inside, the cabin was warm but dimly lit. Books and old photographs lined the shelves. A half-finished painting leaned against the wall, a mountain scene, frozen mid-brushstroke. Lucas sat down at the table, still staring at the envelope. "This letter." He swallowed hard. "It's from Claire." Emma sat quietly. "Who's Claire?" "My fiancée," he said softly. "She died 3 years ago, the night of the avalanche." The world seemed to pause between them. "I was supposed to meet her that evening," he continued. "We argued that morning. Something stupid. She left early to hike before the storm came in. She never made it back." Emma's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry." He nodded absently, his gaze fixed on the seal. "They never found her pack, but she always carried her journal. She wrote letters to people, letters she never mailed. Maybe this was one of them." He broke the wax and unfolded the page with shaking hands. His lips moved silently as he read. Then his breath hitched. "She forgave me," he murmured. He pressed a hand to his face, the weight of years crumbling all at once. "She forgave me for giving up on us." Emma sat in silence, unsure what to do. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red but clear. "You don't know what this means. For 3 years I've lived with guilt, believing the last thing she felt for me was anger. And now—" He looked down at the letter again. "She loved me until the end." Emma smiled faintly. "Then maybe the letter wasn't lost. Maybe it just arrived when you needed it." He looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe you're right." Over the next few days, Emma couldn't stop thinking about him, about the letter, the sadness in his eyes, the cabin surrounded by snow. And then, one afternoon, he appeared at the post office. "Mr. Hale," she said, startled. "Lucas," he corrected with a small smile. "And please tell me your name, so I can stop calling you the mail angel in my head." She laughed. "Emma." "Emma," he repeated. "Would you maybe join me for coffee? As a thank you." Her first instinct was to decline. Small towns talked, and she didn't do spontaneous. But then she remembered the ache she always felt at sunset, the quiet longing. Maybe it was time to answer it. "Coffee sounds nice," she said. They met at Maple's Cafe, the oldest place in town, all wood beams and cinnamon air. At first the conversation was hesitant, two people tiptoeing through unfamiliar warmth, but soon it flowed easily. He told her about his old life, a travel photographer who'd roamed the world, chasing storms and sunrises, until the night tragedy grounded him. "I stopped taking pictures after Claire," he admitted. "Everything looked hollow." Emma smiled gently. "Maybe you were trying to photograph peace before you'd made peace with yourself." He raised an eyebrow. "You always sound like that." "Like what?" "Like you just dropped a quote people will remember forever." She laughed. "Sorry, I work alone too much." He smiled. "Don't apologize. I think you're right." From that day, they started meeting more often, sometimes by accident, sometimes by quiet design. Lucas would stop by the post office with a thermos of coffee. Emma would bring muffins to his cabin on her route. They talked about books, old music, places they wanted to see. He started painting again. She started sketching on scrap envelopes during her breaks. It was slow, soft, unspoken, the way healing often is, but neither of them wanted to name what was growing between them. Out of respect, out of fear, out of guilt, until one night in February, the snow had melted into rain. Emma was closing up the post office when the power went out. The storm howled against the glass, and she jumped at the sudden darkness. Moments later, headlights appeared outside. It was Lucas, drenched, holding a lantern. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so. Generator's dead." He grinned. "Then come to the cabin. I've got light and hot soup." She hesitated. "I don't want to intrude." "Emma," he said softly, "you delivered light once when I didn't have any. Let me return the favor." She smiled, heart racing. "Okay." At the cabin, the fire crackled softly. Rain drummed on the roof like quiet applause. They sat across from each other, sipping soup and listening to the storm. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked suddenly. "Willow Ridge?" "Yeah, the world's big. You could go anywhere." She looked into the fire. "I used to dream about that. Art school, exhibitions, cities full of noise. But I don't know. Lately I feel like maybe what I'm looking for isn't out there." He nodded slowly. "Maybe it's not about where you go. Maybe it's about who you find." Their eyes met, and the silence between them grew thick with something neither dared to break. She looked down. "Lucas, I don't want to be Claire's shadow," he finished gently. She nodded. He smiled faintly. "You're not. She helped me find peace. You helped me find life again. They're not the same thing." Emma blinked back tears. "That's a beautiful way to put it." He reached out, brushing his fingers against hers. "You make me remember what light feels like, Emma, and that's something I thought I'd lost forever." Weeks turned into months. Spring came to Willow Ridge, melting the snow and painting the valleys green. Lucas began a new project, photographing people around town, capturing their stories. He called it The Lives That Waited. Emma helped him collect stories: farmers, teachers, widows, children, people who had waited for something: love, forgiveness, a chance. And slowly they realized they weren't just documenting stories, they were living one. One morning, a package arrived at the post office. The label was smudged, the handwriting delicate. Inside was a small hard drive and a letter addressed to Lucas Hale. Emma frowned and called him. He arrived within minutes, breathless. When he saw the return name, his face went pale. Claire Bennett's sister. He opened the envelope. Inside was a note. "Lucas, I found this among Claire's things. She wanted you to have it. I think she'd want you to see." He plugged the drive into his laptop. A folder opened, letters to Lucas. Inside were hundreds of photos, mountains, skies, their cabin, and text files, each titled Letter 1, Letter 2, and so on. He opened one. "If this letter never reaches you, it's because fate had other plans. Maybe someone else will deliver it, someone who will remind you how to live again." Emma covered her mouth. Tears welled in his eyes. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew someone would find me when I was ready." He turned to Emma. "And that someone was you." That night, Lucas showed up at her door with something wrapped in cloth. It was a camera, old but carefully restored. "She used to say every picture tells a truth. I want you to have this," he said. Emma shook her head. "Lucas, please, you brought me back to life. Let me give you back your dream." She took it gently, tears shining. "Thank you." A year later, the town gathered for the opening of Lucas's exhibit, Letters That Found Their Way. The gallery was filled with portraits, not glamorous but real. Faces marked by joy, struggle, survival. In the center hung one photo larger than the rest. Emma standing in front of the old post office, snow falling softly around her, holding an envelope with the compass seal. The caption beneath read, "A reporter asked Lucas what the story behind it was." He smiled. "It's simple. Love isn't always sent. Sometimes it's delivered." Months later, on a warm August evening, Lucas invited Emma to a small wooden bridge overlooking the valley, the same spot where she'd once handed him the letter. The sun dipped low, painting the sky gold. He turned to her. "You once told me that letters have souls, that they carry more than words. I think people do too." She smiled. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when Claire died, I thought her story ended. But then you came along, and I realized maybe her letter wasn't just to me. Maybe it was to both of us, to remind us that life keeps writing even after loss." He took a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a silver locket in the shape of a compass. "Emma Blake, will you keep walking with me? Through every wrong turn, every lost letter, every road that leads us home?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes." As they kissed beneath the golden light, the wind carried the faint scent of pine and snow, like a memory made whole again. And somewhere, perhaps in the quiet between heartbeats, Claire's spirit smiled, because her letter had finally arrived. A year later, Willow Ridge held its first Festival of Letters. People from across the country mailed unsent messages, apologies, dreams, lost goodbyes. Emma and Lucas displayed them on strings that swayed in the breeze. Each letter represented a chance not taken, a love remembered, a moment reclaimed. When a young girl asked Emma why people sent letters they'd never mail, she smiled and said, Because sometimes we just need to believe that our words can still reach the right heart, even if it takes years. Not every message arrives on time, but the ones meant for us always find their way, through storms, through years, through the hands of strangers who become family.